Hello, I'm Mark Hertsgaard, and I want to thank you very much for inviting me to speak with you today. I'm sorry I can't be with you there in person, but it's a great honor to be invited to join a community of fellow journalists there in Japan. I'm really, really grateful, and on behalf of my organization, Covering Climate Now, I just want to thank you for everything that all of you are doing to make climate change a bigger story in our journalism around the world. I should say that I personally have been covering climate change since the 1990s. I've reported on it from 25 countries around the world, including Japan and much of the United States. I write books. I have done television, radio, and long-form print. And for many of those years, reporting on climate change was a pretty lonely occupation. So it's really great to see that now, in this year of 2024, decisive year really for climate policy around the world, it's just great to see so many fellow journalists stepping up. So I salute you, I applaud you, and I thank you for everything that you're doing in Japan. And I'm especially glad to hear about the formation of the 1.5 degree coalition of news organizations in Japan. That's really, really great. And we at Covering Climate Now would like to be able to collaborate with as many of you as possible, as many of you as makes sense. I would like to, I guess, say a little bit about Covering Climate Now. It seems kind of similar to what your 1.5 degree initiative is. So for those who don't know, Covering Climate Now was founded in the year 2019, co-founded really by the Columbia Journalism Review at Columbia University in New York, and also The Nation magazine, where I have been the environment correspondent for many years. And it's essentially a community of journalists and news organizations around the world, all of us committed to doing more and better coverage of what we think of as the biggest story of our time. It has had a lot of progress, I think, since 2018. We now have more than 500 news outlet partners around the world, that some of the biggest names in news and also very small news organizations, both commercial news organizations and non-commercial news organizations. In Japan, our biggest partner is the Asahi Shimbun newspaper. They've worked with us closely on many projects over the years, also NHK Television and others. You can email us at editors@coveringclimatenow.org. And this seems an appropriate moment to say as well, I'm sorry that we do operate in English. I don't speak very much Japanese, besides domo arigato. But we hope that you will excuse that and get in touch with us. We really look forward to working with you. And in that regard, I want to give a special shout out to my colleagues at the Asahi Shimbun and also to the group, The Media is Hope, which has been so instrumental in bringing me together with you today. So I'm here to talk about solutions journalism as it relates to climate. And this is a very, very important breakthrough in climate journalism. And I say that again as someone who has been on the climate beat for 30 years now. So I hope solutions journalism is something that you will practice in your own work. But first, let me give you a little context for this. This kind of journalism, solutions journalism, this is what our audiences want. This is really important, whether you're pitching your editors to convince them to do more climate coverage, or if you are an editor or in management at your news organization. We all know it's hard to get people to pay for news. And unless people pay for news, we can't, as reporters, deliver that news. So it's really important for us to recognize that according to the opinion polls and opinion surveys, it's very clear that what the public wants is more solutions journalism, not just talking about the bad news, but also the good news. And that's especially true on climate change. For many years, it was seen as within the media, and I've worked for Japanese and European and American news organizations for many years. And it was always hard to sell a climate story because editors or producers said, oh, who wants to hear about that? It's just depressing. So people have a sense that, a vague sense that this is bad and it's serious and we better do something about it. That's where they want to know, what do we do about it? And that's what solutions journalism can do. The good news there on solutions journalism is that we have the technology. Science has said that repeatedly. The last IPCC report made that very clear. And we wrote about this in Covering Climate Now. There's a graph inside of that last synthesis report. And the Guardian newspaper reported on this, and we covered that as well, that basically says, here's the main 5 technologies that the world should embrace and implement if we want to keep temperatures to 1.5 degrees. So we have the technologies. That's the basis of good solutions journalism and climate change. Why aren't we using those technologies? The problem is the political will. And the reason there is that basically shifting to these new technologies means rapidly phasing out oil and coal and gas. And there are very strong, very powerful, very wealthy special interests who resist phasing out oil, coal, and gas. You know, the big companies, basically, and the governments that support them. So that's where our solutions journalism comes in, is to talk about the technologies that can work, and what are the obstacles to those technologies. So it's both a technological story and a politics story. And solutions journalism, when it's good, is not activism. It's not cheerleading. It's not sugarcoating the facts. Rather, it is telling the entire story. The bad, yes. The problem, yes. But also how that problem might be solved. What are the potential solutions? Potential is what I said there. And that's a second part of good solutions journalism. It has to be based on evidence, not wishful thinking, real evidence, just like good reporting in general. And we have to interrogate that evidence, ask critical questions, again, just like journalism in general. So if you do that, we will be able to tell, okay, which are the solutions that are real to climate change? Which are the solutions that actually don't work? And that, again, is our role as journalists. We have to be able to tell the public and policymakers, okay, here's a real solution, here's a false solution. So quickly, on technologies, again, that's the obvious part of solutions journalism. And we see recently the rise of renewable energy around the world. That is a huge solutions journalism story, and something that I think that the public wants to see. The International Energy Agency in early January this year announced that renewable energy growth around the world grew 50%, that's 50% faster in 2023 than it did the year before. And crucially, that trajectory puts the world on track for tripling renewable energy capacity around the world, just in line with the goals that were announced at COP28 last fall. So that's a huge success story. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't apply skepticism, but go out and report on solar and wind and energy efficiency and batteries and all the ways that those are rolling out, what it means for jobs, what it means for business investment, what it means for local communities' tax bases. That's a fertile area for solutions journalism. But the second area for solutions journalism, and is often overlooked, is politics. And in this election year, that is especially important because, as I say, so many of these decisions are driven by politics. And for many decades, governments around the world have favored fossil fuels with their subsidy programs, with their regulatory programs and laws. They've given fossil fuels a benefit in the marketplace. As the International Monetary Fund estimates that governments around the world subsidize fossil fuels by some 7 trillion, that's trillion with a T, dollars every year. So of course, that distorts behavior out in the marketplace. It makes fossil fuels look a lot cheaper than they really are. So that's a huge political story. And this year, 2024, there are elections around the world in dozens of countries. In fact, about half of the world's population will have the opportunity to vote this year, about 4 billion people. All of these elections are going to basically decide the climate future for humanity, because science says we have got to get off fossil fuels in the next 10 years or so. And so for the next 4 years, whoever we elect in these elections of 2024 are basically going to make those decisions in government about whether we really phase out fossil fuels fast enough to preserve a livable planet for our young people. So again, the role of the press here in these elections, I think, is twofold. One, we have to inform the voters about what's at stake, why climate matters, how urgent rapid action is, and what the candidates want to do about this, that they have the opportunity to vote for. And then second, we in the press have to hold those candidates accountable. We have to press candidates, what do you want to do about the climate crisis? And then compare what they want to do with the science. One pro tip, do not ask the question of candidates, do you believe in climate change? That framing of the phrasing of the question implies that there is some kind of doubt still about climate science. That stopped being true years ago. Instead, you want to ask candidates, what is your plan? What will you do about climate change? And how will you get it done? So those are two examples. I've probably spoken a little bit too long today. I apologize for that. But just know that Covering Climate Now has a lot more resources on solutions journalism on our website. You can also subscribe to our newsletter, The Climate Beat, and just get in touch with us and we can continue the conversation. I'd be very happy, and my colleagues at Covering Climate Now will be very happy to engage with you. We can have Zoom meetings or email exchanges, etc. But until then, I again want to thank all of you for all the hard work and wonderful work that you're doing to raise the climate story up in your journalism, and pledge to you that we'd love to be including you in our growing community of journalists around the world who are committed to doing the kind of coverage of climate change that this historic moment on the Earth requires. So thank you again for having me. And on behalf of all of my colleagues at Covering Climate Now, this is Mark Hertsgaard, wishing you a very pleasant day.